if you have fear. Turn that fear into hope. What happens to your brain when you're in a fear state is you actually can't learn. And the best way to get out of a fear state is to learn. All right, friends and neighbors, welcome back to Mind the Machine. You know, we're going to do something a little different here today. I realized, it dawned on me in our fabulous production team at Madre Media that I do keynotes around the country and actually the globe just recently on AI. And there's a lot of insights that I've been able to curate through work with not only with companies, with partners, with software development teams, and ultimately with those in the industry. And so I thought it'd be a great idea to give the same keynote that I've been giving to the Tribal Hub Group, to the Small Business Association. It is also part and parcel of the course that I teach in micro courses at the 6 universities. And it's also the basis of a course that I will be teaching for a master's program in the fall. So the bottom line is, I thought this would be a good podcast for you, my fellow aficionados, seeking to understand how to be human in a more mechanized world. Every day becomes a more mechanized world. So today we're going to talk about not only the roadmaps of AI, we're going to talk about some of the tools of AI that I think are lesser understood and lesser known. We're going to talk about the societal implications as well. And then we're really going to end on what's next for business. So we could think of this as AI for small to medium business and how to think about AI if you are new to AI relative to what are those business models and how can you have success there. All right. And so let's call this what it is. And it is AI fluent, how to be AI fluent. So as many of you know, I have spent 20 plus years in industry, started out as a journalist, technology journalist for CBS, and then went on to mp3.com. Now, keep in mind, back in 1997, there was no YouTube. Okay, so, it always shocks my kids when I tell them, listen, I'm older than Google. They can't really fathom that because, Google's been around forever, as has YouTube, so it seems. And, if you're in an industry, especially a broadcast medium, in this world, you really want to think about what does that mean for the technology of the day. And that was pure broadcast, right? Over the air, broadcast. And when we built the internet, the royal internet, mp3.com was my next stop. And that was a phenomenally disruptive company that basically celebrated the MP3 format by basically allowing folks to have access to their own music digitally. Very disruptive. On to open source, working on Linux, then to Qualcomm for 10 years in a variety of capacities, from display tech, in Taiwan, to also, the traditional things that Qualcomm does is ushering in the smartphone era. And then on to Sony Global, really looking at robotics such as Aibo, which you've heard me talk about in the past. That is the emotional intelligence robot, as well as autonomous driving platforms, which Sony is pushing pretty hard these days as they're powering a lot of different automakers' autonomous experience. So all of that really colors how I look at business, how I look at AI, and how I look at the roadmaps. And in the capacity that I operate today as the CEO of FineGood.tech, this is what FineGood.tech does, is really looks at businesses from the 360 point of view. We try and find the efficiencies, but more so we really try and look at how do companies really lean into an AI strategy. And guess what? Not everything requires AI. Believe it or not. I know, I said it. Not everything requires AI, but a lot does. Many of this can happen in an off-the-shelf capacity, and a lot of this can happen through custom software. So with that, let me just start out by saying is number one, if you read my book, How to Win Friends and Influence Robots, published last year, then you know that effectively my core premise is please never describe any technology or listen to anyone who describes technology as magic. Because if you think it's magic, we got bigger issues. Magic is the bending of natural laws, and or it's some kind of dark art trick. Nobody wants to be tricked, and we all want to understand what it is we're putting our information into. And so AI is not magic. There are really great chapters in the book. One chapter in particular, chapter 5, Talk Nerdy to Me, where I talk about exactly how AI works so you can understand not only why it works the way that it does, but you can understand where those risks are. But the bottom line, it gives you an X-ray, as it were, or a lens into how to think about AI across all systems. If it's generative AI, the premise is largely the same. The way that it operates is largely the same through word prediction. So it's not magic. The other part of an AI journey is understanding, is AI hype? And so it's not hype either. Now, anytime there's new technology, there is chaos. And anytime there's chaos, there's criminals. But anytime there's chaos, there's also opportunity, right? And so most criminals are opportunistic. So this makes sense. So with that, I want you to think about hype in the sense of not true. And in this sense, it is absolutely true that AI is a megatrend. And how do I know that? Well, we know that if we look back in the history of time from the PC evolution to the .com evolution, which I referenced, to the cloud revolution, to the smartphone revolution, to all of these points in time where technology morphed and changed. Every single one of those categories were underestimated. And by almost on average, by an average of about 30%. But in the PC era, it's 36% underestimation. What does that mean? Is that mega trends like artificial intelligence are incredibly hard to forecast over the long term. Right. And so I firmly believe that we as a society are taking the promise of all of those things, PC, cloud, internet, mobile, smartphone, and the confluence of all of those has allowed us to really arrive at what is an AI era. So I think it's not only a mega trend, I think it's a mega trend. No one else would probably say it that way. That's how I say it. Triple mega trend. So I do want to tell you why I got interested in AI. I talk about this in the book. Fundamentally is because as we get older, not only are there cognitive penalties, but your bodies break down. And so we know that through computer vision and through augmenting of sound, you can really restore what your carbon life form might betray you with things that will help you, such as artificially intelligence modulated sound for hearing loss, or any number of things that I covered at CES where we talked at Age Tech. So this is something I find very interesting, but probably the most important is really that cognitive. At some point, our minds do really slow down in their processing. And this really happens in the short-term memory, and we know this. And so if we are to have a highly functioning society at all levels, most folks are going to benefit from having some augmented support in remembering and writing and drafting and forecasting and predicting. But it's way more than that. The other reason why I'm quite excited about AI is because the model capabilities are expanding rapidly. And so what does that mean? It really means that computational power, that's the power of how much can process, is exponentially growing. This is another proof point why I know this is a mega trend, right? We're seeing this massive innovation, and this innovation happening on computational, again, ability to process a tremendous amount of information rather quickly is doubling on average about every 5 months. Some reports say 9 months, some say 5. So on average, it's certainly under a year. And so why is this important? Well, and why is it happening, I guess, is really the bigger question. Is it's massive computational power. It's coming from better data sets. That means more information, smarter algorithms, which is great. And of course, competition. Our tech sector is competing very hard, and we know that just by looking at things such as DeepSeek and other competitors in the space. And I would say, if you look at all the top players right now, they're about 6 months in terms of advancement in each segment. And said another way is 1 month you have Grok leading the pack. The next month you have Meta leading the pack, or Llama, then, and so forth, and GPT. So super competitive. So because of that competition, it is causing compute to drop in price. And so what does that mean? That means is that compute, again, that ability to process, is the cost to doing that is actually falling. So if you're a business owner, you're thinking and you're trying to forecast 5 years ahead, maybe 10 years ahead. What's the true cost of AI? Am I going to be someone that's going to be taking a GPU from NVIDIA? Am I going to need to do this? Like, what is that really going to look like for my environment, my work environment? And I don't know. I don't know what your work environment is, but these are the type of things that you think about. So one thing I like to talk about is something that seems elusive. And that's, what is the business model of AI? Really, what are they selling? If you're a ChatGPT user, you think it's probably free, or, hey, it's $20 a month, they're selling access, but what they're really selling is access to compute power. And guess what is being computed? It is characters. Well, characters are it's like a letter or a number. And they're bundled in these things called tokens. So a token is 4 characters. So they're selling or metering out, just like electricity, tokens. So you're being charged per token. And so every query that you put in, or every question you ask these systems, has to use some computational power to be able to give you that answer that you want, to give you that insight. And so this is how you should think about, is that there is an actual cost here, and that understanding that this is metered approach is how all generative AI systems are measured and how their pricing is. Now, today, there's a lot of free access. Grok, for example, one of my favorites, by the way, and this is Elon Musk's company. It's the big Colossus Center in Memphis, Tennessee, which I think is pretty exciting. They build it quite rapidly. Its claim to fame is it's really real time. It's using a lot of information from Twitter, of course. So it is probably one of the more powerful ones. And I think the insights are really great. And maybe that's a personal preference. But bottom line is, it's free. It won't be free forever. And also, too, there are certainly ways that you can pay for more comprehensive approaches using Grok, depending on what you need. But bottom line, that's not the real cost. I mean, it's not free. Air is free. Some water is free, right? But Grok is free today. That is not the true cost, nor is it the true cost of any of the other generative AI systems that you're using. So keep that in mind when you do your forecasting. So the other thing I like to think about is, well, how do you adopt AI as a company? If you're an organization and you want to figure out, how do we get folks to be able to have the same exponential contribution that AI is giving? What does that look like? Well, it looks like making sure they have a seat or a license to enterprise level large language models, again, of your preference, whether that's ChatGPT or if that's Microsoft Copilot or Gemini, whatever platform your organization uses. You have to really think about that per seat licensing cost. So that's number one. Number two is policies. What is your policy? Are you allowing folks? Are you training folks? Are you encouraging folks to use these systems? And if so, do they understand how to make sure that these systems are not training on the company data? This is hugely important, because, I don't know, back in the day it was, hey, never write an email unless you wanted to see it on the front cover of the New York Times. Like basically don't send something terrible to someone because you never know where it goes and it will probably be publicly revealed. Well, in the case of AI, you don't know where it would be revealed. But if companies are training on your data and you're putting in sensitive information and someone else is querying on the other side of the world, it is likely to believe that you not only have created a breach for your company information, but you don't even know where it's going to crop up. So bottom line, make sure you have a policy where folks are not putting in sensitive data. They understand how to turn these systems off so they're not training on them, on the personal data, and then just be aggressive. Or maybe assertive, not aggressive. Be assertive on not only creating that policy, publicizing that policy, and then encouraging folks to talk about their usage. Because an interesting fact is that a lot of the usage, reported usage, is really quite low in companies. So if you ask companies how many people are using, you get something like 46%, low 40s to, mid 40% usage. And the reality is it's actually quite higher. There are a lot of folks that like to use the generative AI tools on their phone, outside of firewalls. They're using this because they do want to participate in accelerating their work output. They don't really want their company to know because the company doesn't have a policy. The company is not paying for it. And, believe it or not, there's a little bit of weird shame. And we call this shadow usage. So if someone's doing shadow usage of AI, that's not a good thing because they're not in lockstep with the policies. And they also, too, you want to make sure that they're using the best of what you have to offer. So training is a huge part of making sure you are an AI forward, AI fluent company. So it's policy, it's training, and then it's workflow. And that sounds kind of boring, but it's, it's kind of how you get to do what you do. What are your key performance indicators? What product are you doing? How do you measure your success? So we look at KPIs, but we also look at how do you start your day? How do you end your day? And what's everything in between? Because what you're looking for is obviously patterns. You're looking for patterns of repeat behavior. If you always write copy, or if you're always drafting a press release, or if you're always putting together PowerPoint presentations, or if you're always thinking about strategies in new markets, where can generative AI play a role in that? And so that's the next step is that workflow. And then ultimately an analysis of, is this an off-the-shelf strategy? Are you using the right tools to do this? Just because your organization is on a Microsoft platform doesn't mean that that's the best for you. And I would say that is the value and the excitement of being alive at this time with generative AI, because the tools we used yesterday may not be the ones that you're going to use tomorrow. And that whole state of disruption, from horizontal SaaS, where we have software as a service that covers all part of the work, to vertical SaaS, where you're really focused on just your niche, just your area, where many businesses are focused on that vertical SaaS. So these are just a few things to think about. And I think it's iterative too. If this is changing every 5 months, the capacity is getting better, and we know that there's, 35,000, that's not an exaggeration, by the way, 35,000 startups have been launched since generative AI was launched in 2022. You bet your bottom dollar that there's definitely some new tools out there worth exploring. So partner with someone that can help be your advocate, whether that's a chief AI officer or a fractional chief AI officer or a voluntold individual. Usually you don't have to volunteer them. They raise their hands because we always have some AI nut in every company. That would be me, head nut here. So bottom line is, that's your step. Those are your steps to get there. Now, if you're an employee, there's another side of the employee profile that's worth talking about, and that is the fear that they have. And this fear is, it's palpable, it's pretty real. Usually when a technology rolls out, it's been about, we're going on nearly 3 years. In November, it'll be 3 years. When a technology rolls out over time, it is more understood and fear drops. So in the early days of AI, fear was about 53%. And now fear/overwhelm of AI, as reported by Pew Research, is now at 83%. And that's a US statistic. That's actually really high. And so it is contra what I would think about how new technologies disperse, but it is a reality. Part of the fear is coming from that job loss. I'm not like breaking news here. I think everyone knows that jobs are changing, but we also know that jobs are shifting. And this is another incredibly important data point for training, because if you can educate on the basics of AI, you can come alongside those employees. And while you may not hire new people, as you had projected maybe a couple of years back, you certainly can keep the ones that you have and make sure that they're working in a way that not only they're stoked about, but their production level is on par with everyone else that is using AI. We talked about shadow use of AI in making sure that you have that policy in place so folks know, please don't use it at home and use company data to affect that. Let's get everyone on board. Let's get everyone on the plan. The other thing is really the lack of depth in that training. Now, I think the training is, first, there's an education standpoint, which we've discussed, but the training is really now this consistent, intentional, quarterly, or at least, I wouldn't say annually, but at some interval of continuous education. So that's also a huge part of that. Because if there is this fast pace, you've got to stay in lockstep. And all the tools that you're using today, well, I can't say all, many of the tools that are being used today have some AI element to them. And those are also always changing. So your whole tool stack that you have today probably has a lot of duplications in it. So this is another reason to continually be evaluating where you are. All right. So what's the big rub? What's the big message I'm trying to convey here? Well, the number one issue is really, how are you creating efficiency and how are you creating revenue? This is why we're in business, right? And so when you look at the training, you look at the cost, you look at where your data is coming from, you calculate in the ethical risks, do you have your privacy policy out there? Do you have a very secure process, a way of collecting this information, how you're deploying it? When you look at all of those things, there's really three paths, okay? And the three paths are this: affecting an off-the-shelf strategy. That means something that you're going to license that's already out there. I think success can be had in some companies in this way. The second path is a custom build, and there are many companies that this is a great use case for because they have highly sensitive data or they have very specific terminology that you're going to really want to make sure that you're building out. And then the third path, this is typically far more expensive, and you find really large companies are doing this, is that you're hiring a system integrator. And that's someone like a McKinsey or an Accenture and so forth. Very valid path, but it's one that costs a lot of money. So when you're thinking about business, think along those three lines. All right, so just transitioning here to think about you as an individual. Are you ready? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel confident in the tools? Do you feel like you have a read on how capable these tools are for your workflow? And I just ask you to reflect on how much are you relying on trial and error in these generative AI tools? Because if that's your case and you feel like you're generating a lot of data, but you're not really getting this custom tight information, you might want to consider a formal class so you can have structured training. Because what you want to get to a deep understanding of what AI can do, and you want to be able to accomplish complex tasks. Okay, this means using multiple advanced prompts, uploads, spreadsheets, knowledge bases. I'm going to take you through a couple of these things, such as ElevenLabs, where this will give you a sense of how really anyone can build using their own data to affect a generative AI solution. Now, ElevenLabs has been out for a while, but it's definitely one of those things that if you're unsure exactly how this works, it can crystallize it pretty clear. But bottom line is you want to apply a strategic approach to this. And so when you have something like an ElevenLabs, which, by the way, ElevenLabs is a voice system. And in that voice system, you are uploading your own content. So I'm just going to play something for you really quickly here. All right. And so here we go. I look forward to talking to you today about the importance of AI across all sectors. The most important thing to know is you must have hope for the future. So that wasn't me. That was ElevenLabs. And in ElevenLabs, I trained the system on my voice for about an hour and a half. And you could see that if you're in the voice business, this might be very disturbing. But you could also see that if you have a repeat use to create video and audio and all of these things, what a time saver this would be. So ElevenLabs is one of those great tools that you can build yourself. You can upload your content. I actually have uploaded my book, and I'll be releasing my book through an ElevenLabs functionality. So you could hear me read the book. It's not really me, but it's kind of me read the book. And you know what? I think it sounds pretty darn good. Every once in a while, there's a weird pronunciation, but hey, I saved myself a lot of money from going in a studio and recording the book. Okay, so I think that's a powerful example. Now let's go on to what's the downside here. So we always hear about hallucinations. So what are we really talking about here? It is the way the systems are designed. It is to predict the next word, right? AI is never going to tell you, sorry, I don't know the answer, because it is designed to predict and understand, maybe not understand, to predict the next word. So it is using all of this knowledge to predict. So hallucinations are part of the way the systems are made. So you're always going to have some measure of hallucinations. Now, there's workarounds to be able to address those hallucinations. There's a couple of ways. Even Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, just recently said that hallucination rate was about 37%. And I'm asking myself, wow, in what world would a 37% error rate be okay? Yikes. I don't know. What if your surgeon had a 37% error rate? I don't think I'd be using that guy or gal or whoever, right? And so in generative AI, that's actually quite high. That statistic was derived from the fact that we're using so much information on the internet, or OpenAI has scraped all of the information on the internet. And if you're using all of the information on the internet to, I don't know, let's say train a child, but if you raised a child and you said, listen, don't talk to him, just put him in a room, put him on a computer and let him just use all of the information from the internet, and you trained that child, he might be pretty scary when he comes out of the room, if he comes out of the room. But the bottom line is this, is that you're going to get a lot of bad information. And why is that? Because there's a lot of bad information on the internet. It is not the source of truth. And this is part of the issue. There are other issues, but the bottom line is, how can you affect and deploy a tool that has hallucinations? Well, here's the good news, folks. If you're creating your own data, such as in the case of ElevenLabs, where I've created my own audio files, I've created my own assets. I've also created other bots where I'm using all of my information. The hallucination rate actually drops, and it drops to about at 8%. Now that is much more tolerable. And if you can deploy something that saves a lot of time, has a sub 10% error rate, also has a disclaimer that, hey, it might get something wrong every once in a while and be sure to check it, then you really can affect an impactful strategy. But just keep in mind, we're not there yet. This is not perfect. And also to getting there, not there yet, is probably not even a right way to say it, because again, this is how these systems, generative AI, is designed. So, all right, segueing on to, well, how are folks really using this today? And from Anthropic, who just did a study, they basically are saying 50% of employees today are using this for augmentation. And I shouldn't say employees. These are folks that are using Anthropic. This is from the Anthropic Economic Index in 2025 for augmentation. So they're having it help build a strategy plan, having it help build an outline for a PowerPoint presentation, having it provide feedback to a board deck, any number of office work productivity activities. The other part is automations. Well, what do we know about automations? These are things, again, these conditions. If you have this, then you have that. So things like Zapier, Tomato, where you're creating integrations for repeatable conditions. And it does make us faster and I would say better. So it makes us faster and better because once you really understand that workflow and you have those you understand what those repeatable parts of your day are, you really can affect some quite phenomenal efficiencies. So throughout this, the rest of this podcast, this is an audio podcast, but it's also video. So if you're listening on audio, I'd encourage you to go to the YouTube so you can see the video because I'm going to show you some of the updated model charts. I'm going to show you how they've progressed. I'm going to show you their cost. I'm going to show you their parameters, which, how much can they process. And bottom line is that it's a neck to neck race. And so make sure that you come into the YouTube channel so you can watch and see all of those latest charts. Next, I'm going to talk about agents. Now, this is a pretty buzzy word. And when I hear the word agent, I think of, 007, super secret, shoots guys. He kind of gets around. It's kind of funny. But, he's a good looking guy. He's an agent. He's pretty slick. But it's agency, right? Our ability and our autonomy to be able to make decisions freely, right? Without oversight. So to have agency. So yes, agents are now showing up for work. And what can these agents do? Well, they can perceive environments. And this could be through computer vision. This could be through sound. They can make decisions and they can take action toward a specific goal. And all of this is without human control. So the question is, how far are we there? Can one effectively deploy in a small to medium business effective agents today? And I believe the answer is yes. Now, I want to share with you what Sam Altman has said about agents in the world of work. He believes and he opines that at least 10% of the workforce would be replaced by these really smart agents. There are utilities that have been launched through OpenAI, ChatGPT, and these GPTs, where there is a very high level of valuable tasks that can be done, including PhD work. All right. So that's for $20,000. You too can deploy a PhD level agent. And this is really important because this is the type of work where I think most of that can really work well, but I don't believe that it's everything. And I think this is the part where the fear comes in. And so I want to now segue to talking about the state of fear if you are an intern, if you're a student, if you're someone that's being displaced, if you're a fear of being displaced, because what I hear a lot of is I hear and see a lot of headlines on layoffs, but what I don't hear is solutions to affect how to survive and thrive in this transition time. So level setting is, and as I had said prior, we are in a state where 85% of our population says their U.S. population says they are very worried or overwhelmed. That's incredibly high. This is from Pew Research. And so in this case, we have to ask ourselves, well, why? And it is this belief that their jobs are going away and that they're being automated out. As we start to deploy agents, and when I say we, through our client work, through our actual deployment with clients in AI that are adopting AI systems, you can see that there is a lot that agents can't do. So, remember the analogy I said about what if you raised a child on the internet and, the hallucination analogy? Well, let me give you another analogy. What if you had a student that read every book in the library yet never left? Never left. This is really what we're talking about with agents, their ability to comprehend and understand everything, but in terms of understanding spatial and depth and the nuances and gut instinct and all of these things, these are the things that we'll struggle to get to when we think about agentic workflow. And so I would say, if you have fear, turn that fear into hope, because there is still a lot of runway ahead in terms of skilling yourself up. There's a lot of runway ahead in terms of being able to identify how these workflows look and to be building custom solutions. And what's that's predicated on is a slide that I'll actually show you, which is seeing the world through logic versus seeing the world through empiricism. Okay, so knowledge and induction is really about being smart. Okay, so we've dealt with the term smart really in the last, I don't know, certainly since 2007, and even really before that for smartphones. So a smartphone, really, it was something that, had this high level of intelligence. So when we think about the term artificial intelligence that was coined in 1956 at Dartmouth at a summer conference by a group of guys that told the world, hey, listen, we're going to build a computer brain. We're going to call it artificial intelligence. Government, give us some money, and we're going to have it done in 2 months. Okay, well, wow, that didn't happen. But they did get that term out there, artificial intelligence. And that term was designed to really terrify people. Oh my gosh, something is now going to replace my brain and it's going to cognitively behave in the same way. Well, it doesn't, right? So again, the difference between seeing the world through logic versus what is really wisdom. So humans are wise, right? But if you're smart and you're intelligent, that definition is I've read everything, I've remembered everything, I've found all of these patterns, I've made all of these connections, and as a result, I'm able to derive the rules. And this is a non-emotional calculation that's based on logic. Now compare that to a human experience. I have understood something, I've deduced something, and I have wisdom about it. So wisdom is I've read a few things, I understand the rules, I'm able to logically reason about these rules of what's true and what might not be true, and I'm evaluating this through human values and some measure of instinct and repeat recognition experience, right? So all of that to say is that wisdom will always prevail. There will always be a human in the loop, and there's many schools of thought on will robots take over the world? And this is artificial general intelligence. Will we get there? And there's a raging debate, right? But I am of the mindset is that there are so many nuances to how we get work done and so many errors that, yes, it could happen one day, but the reality is that humans naturally, instinctively, intuitively do these things better in terms of wisdom. And I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about what does that mean for work. So if these large language models are basically databases that you're querying, and then they're generating these responses that are fantastic, by the way, periods in the right places, grammatically correct, they're fantastic, A+ from every teacher, right? Great output. If you're prompting well, that's great output, but is as good as the idea that you have put into them. So if your ideas are, I don't know, immature, if you've not experienced, building a business model, or if you have limited experience, your ability to drive that generative AI is going to be as limited as your experience. So the operator on the other end, the human generating these prompts into these processes, have a distinct advantage based on the level of wisdom that they have. What we're seeing, and the research suggests, is that there's a trend towards older workers being able to yield phenomenal results from AI based off of cumulative business acumen. So if you are an older worker, and I don't know what old means, but someone that feels like, hey, I've been around for a while and I've got lots of insights and experiences. This is your keen and distinct advantage, right? And I don't have to tell any intern or any new graduate how everyone always says, oh, ChatGPT is like a smart intern. And that's got to feel like a slap in the face, because that was the job that you thought you would have when you graduated from high school that summer or in between every year of college. And so if you're an intern, you're really probably freaking out, because you may have made that correlation between lived experience, which is a proper correlation, lived experience, right, of doing and learning and having an apprenticeship and learning from others to then be able to get enough skill to match up with the theory that you learned in school, but the practical knowledge that you learned in your internship. So if those go away, where are we leaving our students? Where are we leaving basically what I would say is the workforce ladder, right? And so I envision a ladder that is now missing its bottom rung. So what are we doing to our society if we take that bottom rung? Well, the leap to get to the next step is actually quite high. So I basically am making a plea not only to the students and to the new entrants into the workforce, is that this opportunity, this chaos, is something that has to be grabbed by both hands by the individual. I don't think that schools are stepping in quickly enough. And I don't think that organizations are stepping in quickly enough. And so it's a call to you is to take advantage of these tools as much as you can, to learn the fundamentals as much as you can, and to become that AI expert as much as you can, because that is going to be the deciding factor. Now, that may not be a new insight, but I wanted to put it in the context of where older workers sit based off of business acumen, what's happening to that bottom rung of the layer of the workforce, and how you're challenged to meet the same or to have the same opportunities interns had just 2 years ago, 3 years ago. On the flip side, there's two other things. Companies that do things such as hackathons that are trying to figure out how to innovate typically do bring in groups of folks. So I'd also say to you, join an organization where they're very open to iterating in real time that have a community impact. One example of that is the organization that I run as a executive vice chair, and that's like Startup San Diego. So what do? We do open hackathons, and we get partners like Intuit and Neo4j and many others, companies like Unstructured and Perplexity, many others, to come and fill an auditorium full of students and to bring business cases to the community and order lots of pizza and get together and figure out how to build. And in using tools like Replit, these are really, I don't want to say easy, but intuitive. Yeah, they're easy. So if you spend enough time, and by that I mean you make the time, and you sit down and you sit in a community where you're building, this is a great way to beef up your skills. The other thing is we've heard the term vibe coding. So now what I'm going to show you now is me vibe coding and building basically my own website. So yesterday I went through and I wanted some changes and I built some new pages. And in about 3 minutes, I had built really what would take a WordPress developer, I don't know, at least a couple of hours. And I was able to jump in there. And so what you're seeing now is really me vibe coding my own site. So, again, there's many ways for you to learn and to jump in. And the biggest thing here is to recognize, don't let fear stop you, because what happens to your brain when you're in a fear state is you actually can't learn. And the best way to get out of a fear state is to learn, right? And isn't to be inspired and to be encouraged. So if you're not feeling inspired and encouraged, get in community, get out from behind the computer and go in community and talk with people, and then sit down together and figure out how you can do these things. I also offer a online class. It is very easy. I do it by Zoom. I also do it in person. Many configurations. But the bottom line, we make it fun and it's easy and you get the tools. And by the time that you're done, an hour and a half later, you're rocking and rolling. So part of that course also covers really advanced prompting, not just the basics such as, the role or the task description or give me the context, but really some advanced prompting. And so that is something that's covered in the class. I won't go through this now because I think that this is something that, you want to be intentional. No one really wants to talk you through that. But I will tell you that the power of large language models for understanding complex business prompts, that's the super secret sauce right there. We're talking about forecasting monthly recurring revenue. We're talking about, ARR, everything from what's a good use case for a SaaS business model, every business problem that you've ever had or you've ever thought of, whether it's, hey, I'm in the luxury retail segment and I want to use AI, but I don't want to alienate my luxury clientele that expects custom personal service. There are so many nuances to building these wonderful strategies that you can use with some of these powerful large language models. So really deeply think. And I would say the number one thing to really survive and thrive in an AI world is to deeply think about what it is you want to innovate on, what the market needs. And once you have that deep, well-produced thought, then to start to plug that into your AI of your choice to really affect these strategies. So kind of coming in for a landing here, nothing is perfect. We're still in a very formative time. Continued learning is the key. Learning in community is the key. I talk about this in the book a lot. I provide a lot of resources as well. I'll just leave you with this. Make sure that you are, whatever you're doing on these tools, is that you are either anonymizing, not putting your personal information in there, but that you understand how to make sure that these systems are not training on your data. If you're confused, you can't find the setting, just ask in the prompt, how do I turn off you training on my data? And it should show you. And if it doesn't, oh, well, then it's a bad robot. Just kidding. I don't really know about that. But all right. So here we go. So I'm going to leave you with this. I hope that you have some hope here because we are in a time of great opportunity. I want to leave you with a thought about how to learn AI. And the key is don't abandon it too soon. Okay. The other thing is do not go and buy a whole bunch of different tools, a bunch of subscriptions. You really can get the core element of this by a couple of the different platforms. Again, I'm going to have a list there for you. And to think about learning AI, not like memorizing tools from ChatGPT or memorizing tools in Microsoft or memorizing something in Google or any other platform, Grok. It is a capability because in general, they tend to work in general in the same way. So think of this like riding a bike or learning how to swim. And I'm going to leave you with this as a mindset. You cannot learn anything if you're in a state of stress. You have to have a hope, a goal, a vision, and there is a tremendous amount of opportunity. So get yourself in a positive mindset to think about all the great ways that you can affect a business strategy using AI. Mind the Machine is around because I believe fundamentally there is an opportunity to talk every day, maybe multiple times a day, about the innumerable business models of how to create economic viability. I don't say wealth, because I'm not, this prosperity AI, I don't want to sound crypto-esque. Everyone's going to be a millionaire. That's not true. Not everyone's going to be a millionaire. But everyone's going to have utility. Everyone can have a skill. Everyone can participate because the information is there. It's democratized. It's accessible. And you just need to be encouraged to participate, whether that's in community or whether that's online. So Mind the Machine exists so we can talk about all those different business models, so we can engage with each other. So you can tell me, hey, Cheryl, can you unpack the latest? What is Llama doing? What does that mean? Should I know what Hugging Face is? What should I know? Because it is a dialogue and in community. And I try and bring the best folks to talk about that. So bottom line is, Mind the Machine podcast is your resource. Best way to watch it is on YouTube. Okay. But we're on all the major platforms if you want to listen as well. If you want additional information, please sign up for the newsletter, which is on finegood.tech. We unpack the latest tools, tool list. I'll send this presentation that you're seeing now to you so you can look at it in a deeper level. And bottom line call to action is please make sure you subscribe. I would love to be able to just drop into your inbox uninterrupted in a very automated fashion. So with that, that is the podcast of me just talking. I'm officially sick of hearing my voice. Hopefully you're not. And I hope that you go out there and apply hope in your process, and that you come back and you tell me how it worked for you, and you ask questions, and let's have a dialogue going about how you're going to be the best human version of an AI innovator. Sound good? All right, friends. Peace out.